Hello and welcome back. Today we look at Brits who had their lives taken while abroad. Some of these cases are unsolved, whereas others have got justice, but let's head straight into the cases. And the first case we look at is the case of Scarlett Keeling. Scarlett was just 15 years old when she had her life taken on Anjuna Beach in India on the 18th of February 2008. Scarlett travelled to India for a 6-month-long vacation with her family. Her mother's boyfriend and siblings were holidaying in Goa. Scarlett, who had been to Goa the previous year, convinced her family to let her stay alone at the beach. The family travelled elsewhere, leaving her behind. Scarlett helped a local tour guide and even served food at some shacks. The family learned later on that she had an relationship with one of the locals. In early February, Scarlett joined her family in Qatar but briefly returned to Goa to celebrate Valentine's Day. On the 17th of February, Scarlett was seen at the beach bar called Lewis Shack at 3 a.m. She was seen by many eyewitnesses. The bar owner said she was very drunk when she arrived and was trying to get a lift to go home. Instead of returning home, she was seen taking substances with the 2 men that would later be accused in the bar's kitchen. A British national named Michael said he last saw Scarlett with Morali Saga, a man who then tied into an eyewitness. He admitted to taking substances with Scarlett and the other 2 accused men at around 5 a.m, but 15 minutes later, one of the accused, Samson, was found lying on top of Scarlett in the bar's parking lot, and Saga was nowhere to be seen. The British man, Michael, confessed he fled the scene on witnessing this. Saga also confessed later then that Samson came out of the bar, grabbed Scarlett from behind and asked him to leave. Hours later, police spotted Scarlett lying face down at the beach. After her first autopsy, police said Scarlett's death was a case of accidental drowning, despite the pathologist who carried out the autopsy hinting at a fair chance of it being a homicide. Scarlett's mother found her daughter's torn bikini and shorts lying at the beach, untouched by the police, and insisted on a second autopsy. After the second autopsy was concluded, they counted at least 52 marks on Scarlett. They then treated the case as a murder investigation. The 2 suspected men, Samson and Carvalho, were arrested. Saga and the British national, Michael, agreed to testify as witnesses. The case was transferred to the CBI on the 5th of June 2008. In Scarlett's diary, it had a different story. It revealed that she was deeply upset and had written, "I'm stuck and I want to go home." She had also doodled a hangman, hinting she might have considered taking her own life. It's believed that the defenders won the case after the prosecution failed to prove their involvement with material evidence, as well as eyewitnesses who could vouch for the final moments of Scarlett. A lower court had acquitted both men in 2016 after a very long trial. The verdict was appealed against and another trial took place. The prosecution said the men were working at a beachside shack near where Scarlett was found. They had plied her with lots of substances and then attacked her. In 2019, Samson de Souza was found guilty of culpable homicide, not amounting to murder. The second man was accused of leaving Scarlett to lose her life after giving her substances and SAing her. Placido Carvalho was acquitted. They were last seen with Scarlett before her death and gave her the substances. They AR'd her and left her unconscious on the beach where she drowned. The only man convicted, Samson, was given just 10 years of hard labour. Charlie Halford and Florence Anderson had their lives taken in Mount Pleasant in Jamaica in June 2018. Charlie, who was 74 years old, was part of the Windrush generation. He left behind his home in Jamaica as a young man to make a new life for himself in Manchester. He married supermarket worker Gayle, who was 71 years old, and the couple settled in Manchester and started a family. But Charlie, who was a builder, always dreamed of going back there to retire, so that's what he did. He began to build a retirement home in Jamaica. Shortly before they had their lives taken, they were struck by fraud. Between September 2017 and April 2018, every single penny of near the £100,000 money that they had in their Santander bank account had been spent, and the couple were left with hardly any money. They contacted the police and then had their lives taken. There were dozens of purchases, including jewellery, building supplies and high-end alloy wheels that were made at shops in Jamaica, while thousands of pounds were withdrawn from cash machines on the island. Jamaican police said that they were dealing with the fraud and the murder cases together. At the inquest, it was heard that a firearm was used, and then they were set on fire. They also said that the couple had returned to the UK to meet with their bank and flew back to Jamaica at the beginning of June. They were satisfied the bank could refund at least some of the money, but on the 22nd of June the couple were found with their lives taken. The man who was hired to do odd jobs for the couple has since been charged with fraud, but no one has ever been charged with taking their lives. Their son said they are no further forward in finding out what happened, and that the family is completely devastated and frustrated. Amelia Blake was just 22 years old when she had her life taken in Newton in Sydney, Australia in January 2018. When they entered her apartment, they also found a man in his 30s. He was named as Chef Brazil Garang. They believe that he took the life of Amelia and then took his own life. Amelia had lived in a flat in King Street for several months. Emergency services were called to the scene at around 5:30 p.m. after concerns were raised for the welfare of a man and a woman at the property. A former colleague said that Garang was very depressed and he had money worries. He was always asking to borrow money. He had feared becoming homeless and described his life as a living nightmare. Former colleagues who both worked at the same Brazilian restaurant as the two who lost their lives have said that he used to stalk Amelia and was always asking for money. The young man was infatuated with the young British woman and he was constantly talking about her. She was planning on leaving the country where she had been for 8 months in the coming days to travel to Vietnam. But she obviously never made it because he took her life. Kelly Boren, 32, her mother, Maria King, 55, and her 2 children, Jaden, who was 7, and Haley, who was 5, lost their lives in America in Utah in January 2014. Joshua Boren, who was an American policeman, used a firearm and took the lives of his children, his mother-in-law, and his wife. He then took his own life. Officials said they did not find a note at the crime scene. Lieutenant Matthew Johnson of the Spanish Fork Police said the couple had been experiencing marital problems in the months leading up to the crime. The victims were discovered after the colleagues at the police station alerted officials that he didn't turn up for his night shift at work. The colleagues said they were aware the couple had undergone a period of separation but were on friendly terms, with the family going together to Disneyland, Florida over the Christmas. His boss made a statement saying there were no red flags. Everything about him was outstanding. We're a small department, our families are one big family, so we knew his entire family as well. It's just a tremendous shock. I was aware that there had been a recent period of separation, but I am not aware of any violence in the past or anything like that. His wife Kelly was a friend of mine and a friend of my wife, so anything major that would have happened I probably would have known about. I know as a family they went to Disneyland over the Christmas holidays. Lauren Patterson was 24 years old when she had her life taken in Doha, Qatar in October 2013. She had been working at the Newton British School in the capital, Doha, and disappeared after a night out. She was found in a remote part of the desert by a person flying a hawk. The falconer who found her, Al Jabir, was later found guilty of taking her life and then burning her. He was convicted and sentenced to death, but later this was reduced to a 10-year jail term. Alison Patterson, Lauren's mother, said, "There is the possibility that he could stay in for another 4 years, but there is also the possibility he could get off for good behaviour. In Qatar, twice a year they pardon prisoners, so for example he could be pardoned this December on their National Day, so he could be out within a couple of months." After the family pushed relentlessly for a retrial, it did. His sentence was then quashed and a retrial began in 2017. His accomplice Mohammed Abdullah Hassan was jailed for 3 years, and he was found guilty of murder again and would serve life in prison and not the 10-year term as set before. David Daniels was 72 years old when he lost his life in 2018 in Western France. David was a wealthy former company boss and had become locked in with an argument with his only neighbours, farmers, where he lived in France. This case is a little bit different as David is an American, but he took British citizenship and his wife were registered to a home in central London from 1999 to 2013. They sold their house in London for $3.4 million in 2014. The pensioner had his life taken by his elderly French farmer neighbour Jean-Marie after a feud over his untidy farm on the estate outside of the village of Aidan in western France. The millionaire had bought the property in 1997 as a holiday home while the tenants farmed the land, but David moved full-time to the house and said to have been fed up with seeing cattle and a messy farm. The family had been looking after the estate while David Daniels and his wife didn't live there. The elderly neighbour, who was 85 years old, Jean, hid in a tree opposite to the farmhouse gates. He waited for David to bring out the bin bag and then used a firearm and took his life. Jean was arrested and taken for a psychiatric assessment, although the result of his trial is unknown. His son said that his father was a desperate man who feared losing his livelihood. Catherine Berry, known as Anne, and her mum had their lives taken in a Turkish holiday home in September 2013. They had their lives taken after Anne, just hours before, was celebrating her 56th birthday. Veli Akar was her gardener and took their lives. The gardener took the life of Catherine, known as Anne, and then took the life of her elderly mother, Cecilia. Her son Alex was also fired at, but he survived. The police believe that Akar had acted after she discovered the dishonest and deceitful nature of her killer. It is also confirmed that evidence have proved that there had never been a romantic relationship between Catherine and Akar, as had been speculated in the media. The evidence also showed that shortly before she had her life taken, Catherine had discovered the nature of her killing, and that on the account of this she intended to terminate his appointment as her property manager. Her killer was aware what she intended to do and then took her life to prevent her from doing so, as this would have revealed to his family and friends the lies that he had peddled. He had told his family and friends that they had a romantic relationship, and that's where he found his newfound wealth. Cecilia was 87 and had her life taken. Alex was then just 24. He had to have a titanium plate inserted in his leg after the crime. A car had allegedly chased Catherine up the stairs and fired openly around the house. She passed away at the scene. Veli Akar is now believed to have been jailed for life after going to the courts in Turkey. Sarah Shields was 23 years old when she had her life taken in 2010 in Gran, Canaria. Sarah went on holiday with her boyfriend Christopher Chittock to Gran Canaria, but while there it took a tragic turn. In a fit of jealousy on the 6th of July 2010, it began. He discovered messages exchanged between Sarah and her ex-boyfriend William Newham. He called her many names. He then attacked her and punched her in the bedroom of their holiday apartment where they were staying in Mogan. He then dragged her in the dark to a beach and took her life. He then burnt her clothes and put her in the sea, where she was found the following morning. The engineer then flew back to the UK, to the home that they both shared in Ipswich. In a desperate attempt to cover up his crime, he kept his girlfriend's phone and sent texts to her family, pretending to be her. He had been spotted with scratches on his face the morning after by another British holidaymaker. A European arrest warrant was issued and he was arrested 3 days after returning back home alone from their 2-week holiday. He denied murder and claimed the last time he saw Sarah, she left him for a mystery man named Jason she met on holiday the week before she was found with her life taken. Her ex-boyfriend William Newham told the jury of 4 men and 5 women that he had exchanged intimate text messages with Sarah after they split in 2007. She sent him one message from Gran Canaria Canaria, telling him she was sunbathing topless, to which he replied, "I wouldn't mind seeing you." The court was told another she sent while she was still alive read, "It would be good if you were here. It's not the same with Chris." Her boyfriend Christopher sent her ex-boyfriend William Newham a text after he had taken her life saying, "Leave me alone, I'm happy now, I've moved on." Traces of DNA of both and blood were found on a mattress in their room during a police search. He was sent back to the Canaries in 2010. He was sentenced to 24 years imprisonment after being convicted of her murder. He was returned to the UK and was serving time in a UK prison, but the family of Sarah were unsure where, and it has been reported he could be in open prison. At the time, her mum said he only had 9 years left on his term. She was quoted as saying in 2014, "Our daughter is in that grave and it is so upsetting. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem real that he could be out in 2023. Unfortunately, this was the truth. He was released in November 2023, and just this year he had his parole hearing after being recalled to prison for breaking rules. Lindsay Ann Hawker was 22 years old when she had her life taken on the 26th of March 2007 in Japan. She had taught English for a year in Japan starting in October 2006 in Tokyo in a branch of Nova, which was at the time Japan's largest private English conversation school. She shared her accommodation with 2 other foreign female teachers. On the day she disappeared, her family became distressed because of her lack of usual contact, email or telephone. Lindsay told her boyfriend in England how she met a man named Ichihashi in an email message 4 days before she had her life taken. Ichihashi approached Lindsay during her train journey home from work. He at first said Lindsay was his English teacher, she wasn't, and then asked her to confirm that. Ichihashi chased her as she cycled home and asked for a glass of water when she arrived. Lindsay felt sorry for him and allowed him inside her flat, but showed him to her 2 flatmates as she was a bit suspicious. Once inside, he drew a picture of her and signed it with his name, telephone number and email address. The pair agreed to meet for an English lesson at a cafe 4 days later, which was permitted by the Nova school. They met in the cafe on Saturday the 24th of March 2007. Afterwards, they caught a taxi to his apartment a few hundred yards away. Lindsay told the taxi driver to wait for a short time and went to the apartment. 7 minutes later, the taxi driver left as she failed to return. She was then found buried in a bath filled with a mixture of soil and sand on his apartment's balcony. She had been bound and gagged with plastic ties and scarves. Her employer Nova reported her missing at 2:30 p.m. on the 26th of March after she failed to teach her classes scheduled for the 25th and 26th. Lindsay's friends had tried to contact the police, but the message was not conveyed to the proper authorities within the department. 2 officers were dispatched. They reached his apartment at 5:40 p.m. but were not permitted to knock without proper cause. The officers noticed somebody in the apartment even though no light was visible. They had been told of the previous allegation made against him. The officers called for backup at 7 p.m. Within the next hour, 7 more officers arrived. 2 hours after the 9 officers had assembled outside, he left the apartment barefoot and wearing a rucksack. He was made aware of the situation and tried to run away from the officers. 1 officer grabbed his rucksack, but he continued to flee. None of the officers had radios, so the officers on the 4th floor could not alert those on the ground. He eluded the officers by vaulting the last few feet of stairway to the ground, but he was later discovered wearing a pair of athletic shoes. He escaped again by zigzagging through the street. The rucksack contained his gym clothes, which police believed he was going to wash at the gym. The police obtained an arrest warrant for him on suspicion of abandoning her body. They then put him on a nationwide wanted list. In 2008, police investigated other sightings of him. There were many sightings of him in sections popular with homosexuals in Japan. He was identified by many partners. In the last end of that year, the investigation then came to a close. They had no new leads. By October, 140 officers were involved in the large investigation. That month, the police suggested that he may have taken his own life. Lindsay's father called this a ploy to scale down the operation, which some inside sources said was coming to a close. On the 4th of November 2009, police said that he had undergone plastic surgery on the 24th of October in a clinic where he had his nose uplifted. He had failed to receive surgery in mid-October. He had apparently received cosmetic surgery on several occasions to remove 2 moles on his cheek, add a fold to his eyelids, thin both lips and increase the height of his nose. Police released to the press a photograph taken immediately before his surgery. On the 10th of November 2009, he was captured while trying to board a boat. He did not confess when he was arrested. When his 23-day period of detention without charge expired on the 2nd of December, he was charged with abandoning Lindsay and served 2 more warrants for arson and murder. His lawyers said that he was threatened with the death penalty if he did not speak, which is why he did. He was also under lots of stress. On the 23rd of December, one of his lawyers announced that he had acknowledged that he was involved in Lindsay's death, but he had not intended to take her life and attempted resuscitation. In court, he admitted to taking her life to prevent her from screaming for help while he AR'd her. On the 21st of July 2011, he was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder. Lindsay's family had requested the death penalty, but the court felt the death penalty was inappropriate because he had no previous convictions and because he was at the age of 32 and there was still a chance he could be rehabilitated. He is still serving his sentence. Joanna Parrish was just 20 years old when she had her life taken in France on the 16th or 17th of May 1990. She attended the University of Leeds to study for a 4-year degree in French. Her last part of her course was to undertake a work placement. At the time of her death in 1990, she was teaching English as an assistant teacher in Auxerre. She had been due to finish a week after her disappearance. Her parents had planned to visit her in France to take home her belongings, while herself would travel to Czechoslovakia to join her boyfriend, who was a fellow Leeds University student who had also been working overseas. To make extra money while in France, she advertised her services as a teacher in the local newspaper. She offered private English lessons. According to a flatmate, she had been contacted by a man asking her to teach his son. She arranged to meet the caller in the city at 7 p.m. on the 16th of May 1990, but did not return home from the appointment. She was then found the following day 3 miles outside the town. She had been AR'd and had her life taken. Serial killer Michael Fournier was a key suspect. He was convicted in 2008 of the murders of 7 girls and young women in France and Belgium between 1987 and 2001. He was declared an official suspect. The crimes had a similar MO. In particular, she had passed away in similar circumstances to a number of his victims. His wife also claimed to have witnessed her husband take the life of a young woman in the same town before placing her body into the river. Olivier, his wife, was convicted as an accomplice to the murders after helping her husband to lure victims in by offering them a lift, but she later retracted her statements, saying they had been given under duress. DNA evidence collected at her crime scene was taken to a specialist laboratory for examination. In 2009, it was told to the public that this DNA evidence has been misplaced and lost. Her father, Roger, was informed that it had been mislaid. He expressed his disappointment at the loss of the samples, and he said, "It is not completely the end of the line, but the biggest chance has slipped through our grasp." In 2018, the lawyer for Joanna's family told news organisations that the serial killer had confessed before a judge multiple times to murdering her. He passed away before he could be prosecuted for the murder. In May 2023, French authorities indicted Olivier, his wife, on charges of being involved in the murders of Joanna as well as 2 other women. She stood trial for the crimes in November 2023, and on the 19th of December 2023, she was convicted of playing a part in the and the murder of Joanna and 2 other women. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. Peter Falconio lost his life on the 14th of July 2001 in Australia. He was 28 years old. In 1996, he started a relationship with Joanna Lees after meeting her in a local nightclub. They began living together, and following a year in Brighton, they decided to then go travelling. On the 15th of November 2000, the couple went on a trip to Nepal, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, and then Australia. By the 16th of January 2001, the couple had arrived in Sydney on a working visa, and on the 25th of June they departed to go on a road trip. Their plan was to go from Sydney to Melbourne, Adelaide, Darwin, and then finally Brisbane. At around 7:30 p.m. on the night of Saturday the 14th of July 2001, the couple were travelling on the Stuart Highway, bound for the Devil's Marbles in their orange camper van. Falconio was driving and Joanna was sat next to him in the passenger seat. The couple had been conscious of a car that had been following them since they had stopped at Barrow Creek, which was a roadhouse. They were expecting to be overtaken. However, the vehicle pulled up, a white Toyota, and drew alongside. The driver gestured excitedly at them to pull over. Peter stopped the van and went to speak to the man who had pulled off the road ahead of them. The man explained he had seen sparks shooting out of the van's exhaust. As the two went to the rear of the vehicle to investigate, Joanna moved into the driver's seat, ready to rev the engine. She then heard a loud bang from the rear of the van, and moments later the man was at the window, holding a firearm. The gunman climbed into the van. Joanna let him secure her hands behind her back with black cable ties, but fought the tying of her feet and taping of her mouth. She was then dragged to the Toyota, but fearing harm managed to flee into the bush while the gunman was distracted. The gunman searched for Joanna before leaving, passing nearby 3 times, but she hid before finally flagging down a road train driver at 12:35 a.m. She was then taken back to Barrow Creek. The Alice Springs police were called at around 1:30 a.m, arrived to collect evidence and testimonies at around 4:20 a.m. They commenced a search for Peter, the Toyota, and the gunman at 7 a.m. When they returned to the crime scene, they found a dirt-covered pool of blood and the couple's vehicle hidden some 80 metres into the bushland. It was not until 8 hours after the rescue that roadblocks were put in place on the 12 likely roads exiting this district. Police searches of the area in the following months revealed little except for Joanna's footprints. 4 trackers arrived from a nearby settlement within a few days, but none of them found evidence of either Peter or the gunman. A $250,000 reward was posted, but the only new evidence in the Peters case was an unidentified male's DNA trace on Joanna's t-shirt and some related DNA on the cable ties and the vehicle gear stick. Police then began to focus on the registered owners of the 1991-1999 model Toyota Land Cruiser and on the 36 men whom callers had identified in the footage. Based on these results, police interviewed Bradley John Murdoch in Broome on the 1st of November 2001, although Joanna's descriptions did not immediately connect the case to him and no DNA sample was collected. On the 17th of May 2002, investigators caught Murdoch's partner in drug running, who began to relay details of his connections to the case, and a DNA examination of Murdoch's brother also supported his involvement, but Murdoch had then disappeared. On the 22nd of August 2002, he was arrested and tried on an unrelated kidnap and assault charge by South Australian police. His trial began in April 2005. Murdoch was found to have left Alice Springs at a time and in a direction which were consistent with him being at or around Barrow Creek at the time of the crime. Expert testimony presented at the trial indicated that he was the man captured in the CCTV footage at the service station at 12:38. This, combined with the DNA match on Joanna's t-shirt, allowed him to be charged with the murder. On the 13th of December 2005, he was found guilty by a jury and he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 28 years. He was also convicted of other assault-related charges on Joanna. Only after the sentencing, it was revealed that Murdoch had previously been acquitted on aggravated SA on a mother and daughter in South Australia a couple of years earlier. Murdoch is currently in prison and is riddled with cancer. He has still not told the family or police where Peter is. Aidan Brunger and Neil Dalton were both 22 years old. They were both students studying at the Medical School of Newcastle University. Both men were on a 6-week intern program that sent them to Sarawak to work at a local hospital and were set to complete the work placement in a few more days. Witnesses said that outside of a bar, the 2 men were attacked by a group of other men. One of these men had earlier argued with the two Brits for being noisy. The same man who gave chase with his friends later took the life of both of them using a blunt force object. Within a day of them losing their lives, the police had already arrested 4 suspects. At first, the police revealed in a public statement that the first 4 suspects had consumed substances and they thought the murders were likely part of a drug-related gang. They then revealed the 4 suspects wouldn't be charged and only 1 would be charged with the murder, while the remaining 4 were reclassified as prosecution witnesses. 3 of them saw the crime, with the 4th helping dispose of evidence. The main suspect was a fish seller named Zulkifli Abdullah. He was charged with 2 counts of murder at the Magistrates' Court on the 19th of August 2014. He was given the death penalty for each count. On the 9th of December 2015, the Court of Appeal of Malaysia rejected his appeal against his conviction and sentence. On the 17th of May 2017, the Federal Court of Malaysia dismissed his final appeal after 3 judges said that he should get the death penalty. In April 2023, it was the 8th year of his sentence. The Malaysian government elected to abolish both the mandatory death penalty and natural life imprisonment, and revised laws to allow those convicted of murder to face either the death penalty or a jail term of 30 to 40 years. This change took effect in July 2023, and more than 1,000 death row prisoners in Malaysia were allowed to apply for a reduction of their sentences. He applied for resentencing, and the first round of resentencing began in November 2023. On the 14th of May 2024, his resentencing application was brought forward for hearing at the Federal Court. This appeal was rejected again. The judges agreed that he should go to the gallows for the double murder. He currently resides in death row. And that concludes our video today. As always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.